The waitress read one line from an old scroll, and suddenly the Mafia boss had to obey her every command. "Finish translating it," he begged, "and my son goes free, but there was one problem. Every person who'd tried before her was dead within days." The sake glass shattered before Claire even realized she'd dropped it. "Clean it up, girl," barked Chef Tanaka from the kitchen window, his face red under the fluorescent lights. "Table 7 is waiting." Claire Morgan grabbed the broom with shaking hands. 3 months in Tokyo, and she still couldn't get through a shift without breaking something. The underground restaurant, no name, no sign, just a red door in an alley off Roppongi, catered to people who didn't want to be seen. Politicians, CEOs, and, tonight, men with guns poorly hidden under expensive suits. She was 26 and supposed to be defending her linguistics thesis at UCLA right now. Instead, she was sweeping glass in a basement that smelled like grilled eel and cigarette smoke, hiding from student loans she couldn't pay and a life that had fallen apart when her advisor was accused of academic fraud. Her research, 3 years of work on Tokugawa legal documents, had been tainted by association. So she'd run. Tokyo seemed far enough. Table 7. Tanaka yelled again. Claire dumped the glass and grabbed the tray of whiskey bottles, the expensive kind, older than she was. Table 7 sat in the private corner booth, hidden behind a decorative screen. She could hear American accents mixed with Japanese. Laughter. The kind that came easy when you had power. She pushed through the screen. 6 men filled the booth. 3 were white, buzz-cut military types with shoulders that barely fit their blazers. The other 3 wore traditional black suits, but these weren't businessmen. Their hands bore scars. One had a missing pinky finger. At the head of the table sat a man in his 40s with silver-streaked hair and eyes that tracked Claire like a predator watching prey. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. "Ah, the waitress," he said in perfect English. "Your name?" "Claire, sir." She set down the bottles with care, avoiding eye contact. "American?" "Yes, sir." "Educated?" Her hands froze on the last bottle. "I was in college." One of the buzz-cut Americans laughed. "College girl playing waitress. What did you study, sweetheart?" "Art history." "Linguistics," she said quietly. The silver-haired man's eyebrows rose. "Linguistics," he reached into his jacket. The Americans tensed, hands moving toward weapons, but he only pulled out a scroll. Old paper, yellowed and fragile, sealed with red wax that had long since cracked. "Do you read Japanese, Claire-san?" "Some. What about Old Japanese?" He unrolled the scroll carefully. The paper crackled. The writing was dense, vertical columns in ink that had faded to brown. Tokugawa period, perhaps. Claire's breath caught. She couldn't help it. She leaned forward. The characters were archaic, the grammar structure from the 1600s. Legal documents from that era had been her entire focus for 2 years. That's a legal contract," she whispered. "Shogunate era." "Maybe 1640s based on the clause structure." Silence filled the booth. The silver-haired man smiled slowly. "Translate it, and I'll give you $20 million. The Americans burst into laughter. "Boss, you're messing with the help now," one of them said, slapping the table. $20 million for some old paper? "She can't even read it," another added. "Look at her shaking." But Claire wasn't listening. Her eyes had locked onto the first line. The characters were unusual, a mixture of legal terminology and something older. Buddhist? Shinto? The grammar was ceremonial. "By the authority granted under heaven and witnessed by blood," she read aloud, her voice steady for the first time all night. "The bearer of these words shall command the shadow that walks beneath the sun." The laughter stopped. The scroll began to smoke. "What the—" One of the Americans jumped back as the ink darkened, bleeding from brown to pure black. The characters writhed on the page like living things. Claire stumbled backward, knocking into the screen. The silver-haired man shot to his feet, eyes wide, not with anger, but something worse.
Fear.
You read it, he breathed. You actually read it. The ink spread across the scroll like spilled oil, and Claire felt something settle over her skin. Not painful, not visible, but there, a weight, a presence, like invisible chains wrapping around her chest. What did I do? She whispered. The man who had been laughing seconds ago was now pale. Boss Sato, what is this? What just happened? Sato, that was his name, apparently, ignored him. He moved around the table toward Claire with careful steps, the way someone approaches a wild animal. Do you know what you've done, girl? I just read. You spoke the binding words. His voice was low, dangerous. An oath older than this country. Whoever speaks those words becomes the temporary master of my clan until the contract is complete. That's insane, Claire said, but her voice shook. The weight on her chest tightened. Is it? Sato grabbed her wrist, not violently, but firmly. He pressed her palm against the scroll. The ink was warm. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Feel that? That's the pact recognizing you. You're bound to it now. And every Yakuza family in Japan will know by morning. One of his men stepped forward. Oyabun, we can kill her. Break the pact before. You cannot, Sato released Claire's wrist. The law forbids it. Anyone who harms the translator brings a curse upon their bloodline. My son, my grandson, all of them, damned. The room tilted. Claire grabbed the table for support. I don't want this. I didn't mean to. Meaning nothing, Sato rolled up the scroll, careful not to touch the ink directly. You've already spoken the first verse. The pact is active, which means every rival clan, every mercenary, every desperate fool who wants power over the Yakuza will be hunting you by sunrise. Then let me go. Claire's voice cracked. I'll leave Japan. Tonight.
I'll
Leave. Sato laughed, but there was no humor in it. The contract is bound to your life. If you die before finishing the translation, the power transfers to whoever kills you. If you run, you'll be hunted across the world. He stepped closer. There is only one way out, Claire Morgan. You finished translating the contract. And then, his expression darkened. Every translator before you died the moment they spoke the final word. The power they gained was immediately reclaimed through blood. Claire's legs gave out. She sat hard on the floor, the reality crushing down. She'd come to Tokyo to escape her problems. Instead, she'd walked straight into a nightmare written 300 years ago. The door burst open. More men in black suits poured in, speaking rapid Japanese. Sato barked orders, and suddenly Claire was being lifted to her feet, surrounded by a wall of bodies. Where are you taking me? She demanded. Sato looked back at her, and for just a moment, she saw something unexpected in his eyes.
Pity.
Somewhere safe. Or as safe as anywhere can be when you've just become the most valuable target in Japan. They hustled her toward the back exit. Through the chaos, Claire glimpsed one more figure, a small boy, maybe 10 years old, standing in the doorway. He wore a school uniform and held a wooden practice sword. His eyes were old, too old for his face. He looked at Claire the way someone looks at a ghost. Then they were moving out into the Tokyo night, and Claire Morgan's life as a waitress ended forever. The back office smelled like cigarette smoke and old paper. Sato shoved Claire into a leather chair while his men secured the door, their voices an urgent blur of Japanese outside. Drink. He thrust a glass of water into her hands. Claire's fingers were numb. The water sloshed over the rim. This isn't real. This can't be. Real? Sato pulled the scroll from inside his jacket and slammed it onto the desk between them. The ink still moved, writhing like black snakes beneath the surface of the ancient paper. Does that look like fantasy to you? It didn't. God help her, it didn't. The door opened quietly, and the boy from before stepped inside. Up close, Claire could see he had his father's sharp features, but his eyes were softer, uncertain. He clutched the wooden sword like a security blanket. Hirudo, Sato said without looking.
Seat.
The boy obeyed instantly, settling on a cushion in the corner. He didn't take his eyes off Claire. Your son, Claire whispered. My heir. Sato lit a cigarette, his hands steady despite everything. Or he was, until you read those words. I don't understand any of this. Claire set down the water before she dropped it. How can words on paper do? Whatever this is. Sato exhaled smoke slowly. In 1638, the Tokugawa shogunate crushed a Christian rebellion in Shimabara. 37,000 people died. The shogun wanted to ensure no foreign power could ever influence Japan again, so he created contracts, legal bindings with spiritual weight. Blood oaths enforced by something older than law. That's impossible. Is it? He tapped ash into a tray. Your country has its constitution. We have this. Words given power through belief, through centuries of enforcement, through blood spilled in their name. He pointed at the scroll. That contract has governed my family for 14 generations. It binds us to debts, to territories, to loyalties we cannot break. Claire stared at the moving ink. Her academic brain screamed that this violated every principle of rational thought. But her body knew better. She could still feel the weight on her chest, invisible chains tightening with each breath. The translator becomes the master, she said slowly. What does that mean? Exactly what it sounds like. Sato leaned back, studying her through the smoke. Until you finish reading the contract, you hold authority over my clan. My men cannot refuse your direct orders. They cannot harm you. Neither can I. That's insane. That's the law, he smiled without warmth. Try it. Tell me to kneel.
What?
No, I'm not. Do it, his voice hardened. You need to understand what you've become. Claire's throat went dry. This was ridiculous.
Impossible.
But the weight on her chest pulsed, and she heard herself say, kneel. Sato's face went rigid. His body moved against his will. She could see him fighting it, but his knees hit the floor anyway. Sweat beaded on his forehead from the effort of resistance. Haruto gasped softly from the corner. Stand up, Claire said quickly, horrified. Please stand up. Sato rose, his jaw clenched. Now you see. The contract has made you my master until its completion. And every Yakuza family in Japan will kill to possess that power. Then I'll finish it right now. Claire reached for the scroll. I'll translate the whole thing tonight and…
No.
Sato grabbed her wrist, stopping her inches from the paper. You don't understand. Every translator in history died the moment they spoke the final verse. The power transfers, and the clans reclaim it through blood. My grandfather watched it happen. The translator's throat opened like invisible hands cut it, dead before she hit the floor. Claire jerked back. Then what am I supposed to do? Survive. Sato released her and returned to his chair. The contract has 12 sections. You read the first tonight. Each section reveals more. Debts owed, territories claimed, blood oaths binding my family to others. Rival clans will want you to finish it, so they can claim the power. Others will want you dead to prevent anyone from having it. And you? Claire's voice shook. What do you want? Sato looked at his son. Haruto sat perfectly still, the wooden sword across his lap, watching them both with ancient eyes. I want my son to live, Sato said quietly. Every patriarch in my family dies before 50. Heart attacks, accidents, assassinations. The contract binds us to enemies we cannot escape, debts we cannot repay. I'm 43, he stubbed out the cigarette. Haruto is 10. If I die before he's ready, the clan will devour him. Claire followed his gaze to the boy. Haruto didn't flinch from her attention. He just watched, like he was memorizing her face. What's in the final section? She asked. Freedom. Sato's voice was barely a whisper. Or so the legend says. The last verse supposedly releases the clan from all ancient bonds. No more blood debts. No more ancestral enemies. Clean. You've never seen it? No translator has lived to speak it aloud. The room fell silent except for the muffled voices outside. Claire looked at the scroll, at the writhing ink, at the boy who'd never known childhood, at the father desperate enough to risk everything. I didn't ask for this, she said. Neither did I, Sato stood. But here we are. My men will protect you. They have no choice. The contract demands it. But understand this, Claire Morgan. The moment you finish translating, you die. That is the price of power. Then I won't finish it. You already started. He picked up the scroll carefully. The binding doesn't break until completion or death. You're trapped. Haruto finally spoke, his voice small and clear. Will you die like the others? Claire looked at the 10-year-old boy, who'd just asked if she was going to die, with the same calm his father used to order dinner. I don't know, she said honestly. Haruto nodded slowly, like that was the answer he expected. We move in 5 minutes, Sato said. The Americans at that table, mercenaries hired by families who want the contract. They'll report what happened. By midnight, every clan in Tokyo will be hunting you. He opened the door, then paused. The contract cannot be broken, Claire. But perhaps it can be survived. You're the first outsider to ever speak the words. Maybe that changes things. Or maybe I just die in a new way. Sato's expression was unreadable.
Yes.
Maybe that too. He left. The door closed. And Claire sat alone with a scroll that wanted her dead and a future that had collapsed into survival measured in hours. The armored Mercedes smelled like leather and gun oil. Claire sat in the back seat, wedged between two silent bodyguards built like refrigerators. Haruto sat across from her, still clutching his wooden sword, watching her with those unsettling old eyes. Where are we going? Claire asked for the third time. No answer. The bodyguards didn't even blink. Through the tinted windows, Tokyo blurred past, neon signs reflecting off wet pavement, crowds of salarymen stumbling out of bars, the organized chaos of a city that never truly slept. Claire had loved it once, 3 months ago, when she was just a broke American hiding from her failures. Now, every face in the crowd looked like a threat. The Mercedes turned down a narrow street. Darker here. Fewer lights. The buildings leaned close like crooked teeth. This isn't the way to, Claire started. The explosion cut her off. The lead car, a black SUV 50 feet ahead, erupted in flames. The shockwave rocked their Mercedes, and suddenly the bodyguards were moving, shoving Claire's head down, shouting in rapid Japanese. Haruto! Claire screamed. The boy had been thrown against the window but was already climbing back up, his face pale but composed.
No tears. No panique.
Just calm assessment of the situation, like he'd practiced this. What kind of 10-year-old had practiced being ambushed? The rear windshield shattered. Bullets punched through the seats, filling the air with foam and leather fragments. The bodyguards returned fire through the broken glass, the noise deafening in the enclosed space. Out! One of them yelled in English. Out now! He shoved the door open and practically threw Claire onto the wet pavement. She landed hard, her palms scraping against concrete. Haruto tumbled out beside her, rolling with practiced efficiency. They were in an alley. Dumpsters. Graffiti. The burning SUV blocked one end, and figures were approaching through the smoke. 6 men, maybe more, wearing civilian clothes but moving with military precision. The Americans from the restaurant. There, one of them shouted, pointing at Claire. The girl. Alive. Gunfire erupted again. Sato's bodyguards formed a wall between Claire and the mercenaries, but they were outnumbered. One went down, blood spreading across his white shirt. The other dragged Haruto behind a dumpster. Claire's paralyzed brain finally screamed at her to move. She scrambled backward, her hands slipping on the wet ground. A bullet sparked off the pavement inches from her leg. She couldn't breathe.
Couldn't think.
This was insane. She was a linguistic student, not an action hero. This wasn't supposed to. A hand grabbed her collar and yanked her around the corner. Haruto. The boy was half her size but pulled her with surprising strength, his face set with grim determination. Run, he said simply. They ran. Behind them, the gunfire intensified. Men were screaming, in English, in Japanese, in the universal language of violence. Claire's lungs burned. Her legs felt like rubber. Haruto stayed ahead, navigating the maze of alleys with the confidence of someone who'd memorized escape routes. They burst onto a busier street. Salarymen scattered. A woman screamed. Haruto pulled Claire into a 24-hour convenience store, past the startled clerk, through the back storage room, and out into another alley. Where? Claire gasped. Where are we? 3 black vans screeched to a stop, blocking both ends of the alley. Haruto's hand tightened on Claire's. For the first time, she saw fear crack through his composure. The van doors slid open. More men emerged, but these wore the same black suits as Sato's people. The Yakuza. The lead man spotted Claire and barked orders. 2 of them immediately flanked her, weapons drawn but pointed at the street, not at her. What's happening? Claire demanded. Protecting you, one said in broken English. He looked furious about it. Contract says, must protect. Must. They were forced to protect her. The binding Sato had described, they had no choice. An engine roared. The Mercedes, battered, windows shot out, but still running, powered into the alley. The back door flew open, and Sato leaned out, his suit torn, blood on his temple. Get in, he roared. The Yakuza practically threw Claire into the car. Haruto climbed in after her, and this time he sat right next to her, pressing against her side like she was a shield that could protect him from the world. Maybe she was. The contract made her untouchable. The Mercedes accelerated hard, tires screaming. Behind them, gunfire erupted again. The mercenaries had caught up. But now Sato had reinforcements. A full convoy of black vehicles surrounded them, forming a protective barrier. They weren't trying to kill you, Sato said, pressing a cloth to his bleeding head. They wanted you alive. Why? Claire's voice shook. Because alive, you can finish the translation. Dead, the power goes to your killer. They want the contract completed on their terms. He looked at her with something between respect and resentment. You're worth more than the 20 million now. You're worth control of every Yakuza operation in Japan. Haruto's small hand found Claire's, his fingers cold and trembling. She looked down at him. This boy who'd just saved her life, who'd been trained to survive ambushes, who carried a wooden sword like other kids carried stuffed animals. I won't let them hurt you, she heard herself say. Haruto's eyes widened slightly. It was the most emotion she'd seen from him. You can't promise that, Sato said quietly. You're not Yakuza. You don't understand our world. No, Claire agreed, her hand tightening around Haruto's. But I understand children. And I understand that he's just a kid who shouldn't be in a war zone. Sato looked at his son, then at Claire. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe. Or hope. The mercenaries will regroup, he said. And the other clans will learn what happened tonight. We can't stay in Tokyo. Every safe house will be compromised by morning. Then where? Claire asked. Somewhere they won't expect. Sato pulled out his phone, made a call in rapid Japanese. Then he looked at Claire with grim certainty. Osaka. We have a stronghold there. It'll buy us time. Time for what? For you to decide if you're brave enough to finish what you started. He gestured to the scroll, now tucked safely in an interior pocket. Or, if you'll spend the rest of your very short life running. The Mercedes merged onto the highway, surrounded by its protective convoy. Through the rear window, Claire could see Tokyo's lights fading behind them, the city where she'd tried to hide, where she'd accidentally become the most wanted woman in Japan's underworld. Beside her, Haruto's grip slowly relaxed, but he didn't let go. And despite everything, the terror, the blood, the impossible contract, Claire didn't let go either. Claire woke to the sound of seagulls and the smell of salt water. For one blessed moment, she forgot everything. Then reality crashed back. The contract, the gunfire, the way Sato's knees had hit the floor when she'd commanded him. She sat up fast, heart hammering. The room was small and sparse. Traditional tatami mats, a low table, paper screens filtering gray morning light. Through the window, She could see shipping containers stacked like giant building blocks, and beyond them, Tokyo Bay stretching toward the horizon. They hadn't made it to Osaka. This was still Tokyo. The door slid open. Haruto stood there with a tray, rice, miso soup, tea. He'd changed into clean clothes, dark pants, and a simple shirt, but the wooden sword was still tucked into his belt. "You're awake," he said, his English careful and precise. "Father said to let you sleep." Claire's body ached everywhere. "What time is it?" "Almost noon." Haruto set the tray down. "You slept 14 hours. She had? Claire looked at her hands, still scraped from hitting the pavement, dried blood under her fingernails. Not her blood. One of the bodyguards, maybe. The one who died. "Eat," Haruto said. "Father will want to talk soon." Claire picked up the chopsticks with shaking hands. The rice was plain but warm. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since before her shift at the restaurant. A lifetime ago. Haruto sat across from her, not eating, just watching with those ancient eyes. "How old are you really?" Claire asked.
10.
"Almost 11". He tilted his head. "Why?" "Because you don't act like it. Father says weakness is death." Haruto said it matter-of-factly, like reciting a weather report. "I've been training since I was 4. Swordsmanship, tactics, hierarchy. The clan expects perfection. That's not childhood. That's—" Claire stopped, seeing the confusion on his face. He didn't understand. This was all he'd ever known. "Never mind." She finished eating in silence while Haruto watched. When she set down the chopsticks, he pulled something from his pocket, a small notebook and pencil. He opened it, and Claire's breath caught. The pages were covered in drawings. Not childish stick figures, but careful reproductions of the characters from the contract. The archaic symbols copied with painstaking precision, arranged in columns just like the original scroll. "You drew these?" Claire whispered. Haruto nodded. "I memorize everything Father shows me. The contract is important, so I learned it." He pointed to a particularly complex character. "What does this one mean?" Claire leaned closer. The symbol was from the second section of the scroll, the part she hadn't read yet. "I'm not sure."
It's old.
"Really old. Preto Kagawa, maybe." "Can you read it?" "Eventually. With time and research." "How much time?" Haruto's voice was urgent now. "Before they find us again." The door slid open before Claire could answer. Sato entered, a fresh bandage on his temple, his suit replaced by casual clothes that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "Just one." Claire stood, her legs unsteady. Sato didn't smile. He unrolled the scroll on the low table. The ink still moved, writhing across the yellow paper. "I spoke with the clan elders this morning. They want you dead." "I thought the contract prevented that." "It prevents us from harming you directly. But they've found a loophole." Sato pointed to a section of text Claire hadn't translated. "Every translator in history died after completing the contract. But they all died from the contract itself, the power released, their throats cut by invisible forces. So the elders argue that you're already dead, that your life ended the moment you spoke the first words. You're just a ghost walking, and ghosts don't deserve protection." Claire's blood ran cold. "That's insane." "That's tradition." Sato rolled up the scroll carefully. "They've given me 3 days. Either you finish the translation and die properly, or they'll withdraw clan protection. The mercenaries, the rival families, they'll all come at once. My men won't lift a finger to stop them." 3 days, Claire repeated numbly. "Father," Haruto spoke up, his voice small. "The contract says." "I know what it says." Sato snapped. Then he took a breath, softened. "I know, Haruto." The boy flinched anyway. Claire felt something crack inside her chest. "Don't yell at him. He's just a kid." Sato turned to her slowly, dangerously. "He's my son. My heir. You don't tell me." "The contract makes her your master," Haruto said quietly. "She can tell you anything." The room fell silent. Sato's jaw clenched, But he didn't argue. Because it was true. Because some ancient law bound him to obey an American waitress who'd stumbled into his world by accident. Claire looked at Haruto, saw him trembling despite his calm facade, and made a decision she'd probably regret. "I need to see the whole contract," she said. "All 12 sections. If I'm going to die, I want to know why." Sato studied her for a long moment. "Understanding it won't save you. Maybe not. But I didn't spend 3 years studying Tokugawa-era law to die ignorant." Claire met his gaze. "Show me."
He did.
For the next 2 hours, Sato explained what he knew. The scroll contained 12 sections, each revealing a different aspect of the clan's bindings. Debts owed to other families. Territory agreements sealed in blood. Oaths that superseded government law. And, at the end, supposedly, the key to freedom. "But here's what you need to understand," Sato said, pointing to notations in the margins, additions made by previous translators, all ending in bloodstains. Every translator died before finishing. But they all saw something in the final section. Something that terrified them. What? They never lived long enough to say. Haruto had been drawing the whole time, his pencil scratching across paper. Now he held up his notebook. He'd reproduced an entire section, the characters perfect despite their complexity. "The boy is gifted," Sato said, something like pride in his voice. Then the pride faded. "Which makes him valuable. And in our world, valuable things are destroyed before they can be used against you." Claire understood then. This wasn't just about the contract. It was about a father desperate to save his son from a life that would consume him, the same way it had consumed generations of Sato men. "You want me to finish it," she said slowly. "Not for yourself. For him." Sato looked at Haruto, and for just a moment, the Yakuza boss disappeared. What remained was just a tired father who'd run out of options. The final section supposedly breaks all bonds. If that's true, Haruto could have a normal life.
School.
Friends. A future that isn't written in blood. He looked back at Claire. "But yes, finishing it would kill you. So I'm asking you to die for a child you don't know, in a war you didn't start, because of words you read by accident." "That's not fair," Claire whispered. "No," Sato agreed. "It's not." Haruto set down his pencil. "You don't have to," he said to Claire. I can. I can be what father needs. I've been training. I'm ready." But his voice cracked on the last word, betraying him. He wasn't ready. He was 10 years old and terrified and trying to be brave because brave was all he'd ever been allowed to be. Claire thought about her own childhood, summer camps, scraped knees, bedtime stories. Normal things. Things Haruto would never have unless someone freed him. "How long until they find us here?" she asked. Sato checked his watch. "Hours. Maybe less. The harbor district has too many access points. We should have kept moving, but you needed rest. Then we move now." Claire stood, her decision made even if she didn't fully understand it yet. "Osaka. Your stronghold. You said it would buy time." "Time for what?" Claire looked at the scroll, at the writhing ink, at the 10-year-old boy who'd memorized an ancient death sentence because it was expected of him. "Time to figure out how to finish this without dying." Sato almost smiled. "That's impossible." "Maybe," Claire said. "But I'm the first outsider to read it. Maybe I get to write a different ending." The train to Osaka had been Sato's idea. "They'll expect cars," he'd said. "Convoys. Not the bullet train with salarymen and tourists." So Claire sat in a window seat, dressed in clothes that didn't fit, a conservative gray suit borrowed from one of Sato's female employees, trying to look like a businesswoman commuting between cities. Haruto sat beside her, his wooden sword hidden in a backpack, playing a video game on a tablet like a normal kid. Except normal kids didn't check the reflection in the dark window every 30 seconds, scanning for threats. Sato sat 3 rows back with 2 bodyguards, pretending they didn't know each other. The other passengers dozed, worked on laptops, existed in their own safe worlds where ancient contracts didn't make you a target. Claire envied them. "Do you miss America?" Haruto asked suddenly, his eyes still on the game. Sometimes Claire watched the countryside blur past. I miss understanding what people are saying. I miss coffee that doesn't cost $8. Why did you come to Japan? To hide, I guess. From problems that seemed big at the time, she laughed bitterly. They seem pretty small now. Haruto paused his game. Father says running from problems makes them grow bigger. Your father's probably right. He usually is. Haruto returned to his game, but quieter now. That's why people want to kill him. The train pulled into Shinosaka Station at dusk. Sato's men had cars waiting, nondescript sedans, nothing flashy. They drove through industrial areas, past factories and warehouses that looked abandoned, until they reached a building with faded kanji on the side.
Here, Sato said.
Here was a warehouse that smelled like motor oil and concrete. The main floor was empty except for a few shipping pallets and tarps covering machinery. But when Sato pressed a panel on the wall, a section of floor slid open, revealing stairs descending into darkness. Underground?
Claire asked.
The Osaka clan has tunnels throughout the city. Old smuggling routes from the Meiji era Sato started down. They don't officially exist, which makes them perfect. The underground facility was larger than Claire expected, a network of rooms carved from stone, lit by fluorescent lights that hummed quietly. Maps covered one wall. Computer equipment filled another. A dozen men in black suits worked at various stations, all of whom stopped and stared when Claire entered. This is the translator, Sato announced in Japanese, then English for Claire's benefit. She is under clan protection until the contract is complete. Anyone who touches her answers to me personally. The men bowed slightly, but their eyes held calculation. They were forced to protect her, but they didn't like it. Sato led Claire and Haruto to a smaller room, soundproof, judging by the padding on the walls. A table held the scroll, carefully laid out, along with reference books and a laptop. You have access to my research archives, Sato said, logging into the computer. Historical documents, previous translations attempts, everything my family has collected over 14 generations. Claire sat down, her hands hovering over the keyboard. Why are you helping me? If I finish this, I die. And you get. What exactly? Freedom. Sato pulled up files on the screen, scanned documents, photographs of bloodstained papers, notes written in desperate handwriting. These are from the previous translators. 7 attempts in 200 years. All ended the same way. Claire clicked through them. The most recent was from 1987, a Japanese scholar named Kimiko Ito. Her notes were meticulous until the final pages, which devolved into frantic scrawling. The power is not what we thought. The binding goes deeper. If I finish, everyone dies, not just. The notes ended mid-sentence in a brown smear. What happened to her? Claire whispered. She spoke the 11th section and collapsed, dead before the paramedics arrived. Throat opened like invisible claws. Sato pointed to a photograph. But look at her face.
Claire did.
Kimiko's expression, frozen in death, wasn't fear. It was realization. Like in her final moment, she'd understood something terrible. The contract isn't just about your family's debts, Claire said slowly. Is it? No, Sato closed the laptop. The scroll binds the entire Japanese underworld. Every major clan has ties to it. Territories, agreements, blood oaths spanning centuries. When you finish translating, you don't just free the Sato clan. You rewrite the rules for everyone. And everyone with power will want me dead before that happens. Yes. Claire looked at Haruto, who'd been listening silently. He met her gaze and she saw it again, that flash of hope, quickly hidden. He'd been taught not to hope. Hope was weakness. The mercenaries at the restaurant, Claire said. They weren't working for a rival clan, were they? Sato's expression darkened.
No.
They were hired by a coalition. 5 families, working together, something that never happens. They want the contract destroyed, not completed. As long as it exists unfinished, the status quo remains. So they'll kill me to prevent me from translating. And the elders want you dead for translating too slowly. You're trapped between factions who want opposite things but agree you shouldn't exist. Sato lit a cigarette despite the "No smoking" sign on the wall. The only way out is through. Finish the translation and hope you're smart enough to survive what no one else has. That's not much of a plan. It's the only one we have. A knock on the door interrupted them. One of Sato's men entered, spoke rapid Japanese, his face pale. Sato's expression went from controlled to furious in an instant. What? Claire demanded. What happened? The Americans. The mercenaries. Sato crushed his cigarette. They know we're in Osaka.
How?
We were careful. Someone told them. Sato's voice was ice. Someone in my organization sold your location. The room felt suddenly smaller. Claire looked at the men working outside. Any of them could be the traitor. The contract forced them to protect her, but it didn't force them to be loyal to Sato. Father, Haruto said quietly, his hand on his wooden sword. If they're coming, we have time. Hours. Maybe. Sato moved to the door. But we can't stay here. The tunnels will become a tomb if they trap us underground. Where do we go? Claire asked. Sato looked at her, and she saw the chess player calculating moves. Somewhere the contract gives us advantage. Somewhere they can't easily attack without breaking old laws. Where? Kyoto. He pulled out his phone, made calls in clipped Japanese. We have allies there. Traditionalists who still respect the old ways. And you, he pointed at Claire, need better research materials than what I have here. There's someone who might help.
Who?
A professor. Hanayama Kenji. He taught at Kyoto University before retiring. He's one of the few living scholars who studied the Tokugawa-era binding contracts. Sato pocketed his phone. If anyone can help you finish without dying, it's him. Claire thought about her own professor, the one whose scandal had ruined her career. She'd trusted him completely. Look where that got her. Can we trust this Hanayama? No, Sato said honestly. But we're out of options. Haruto moved closer to Claire, his small hand finding hers again. The gesture was becoming familiar, this boy using her as an anchor in a storm he'd been born into. Pack everything, Sato ordered his men outside. We move in 10 minutes. Burn anything we can't carry. The men scattered. Sato rolled up the scroll carefully, the ink still moving like living shadows. 3 days, he reminded Claire. The elders gave us 3 days. We've used 1 already. Then we'd better make the next 2 count. They climbed back up to the warehouse floor. Outside, night had fully fallen over Osaka. The city lights reflected off clouds, turning the sky orange and purple. Somewhere out there, mercenaries were coming. Rival clans were mobilizing. A coalition of power wanted her dead. And Claire Morgan, who just wanted to pay off her student loans and hide from her failures, was now running through Japan's underworld with a death sentence written in 300-year-old ink. Ready? Sato asked. Claire looked at Haruto, thought about a 10-year-old who'd never had a childhood, and tightened her grip on his hand. Let's go find her, Professor.
They didn't make it to Kyoto that night.
Sato's phone had rung twice during the drive, short, terse conversations that made his jaw tighten. Then he'd redirected the convoy to a business hotel on the outskirts of Osaka, the kind that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. The highways are being watched, he explained tersely. We wait until morning. Move with commuter traffic. So Claire found herself on the hotel's rooftop at 2 a.m., unable to sleep, staring at Osaka's sprawling lights. The city looked peaceful from up here. You couldn't see the violence simmering underneath. The rooftop door opened. Haruto emerged, still wearing his clothes from the day, the wooden sword tucked in his belt. He didn't seem surprised to find her there. Can't sleep either?
Claire asked.
Haruto shook his head. He walked to the railing, pulled himself up to sit on it with the casual fearlessness of childhood. Or maybe something else. Maybe the kind of fearlessness that came from being raised to believe death was always close. Isn't that dangerous? Claire moved closer, ready to catch him if he slipped. Everything is dangerous. Haruto looked at the city below. Father says fear is useful, but freezing is fatal. So, I choose not to freeze. You're 10. Almost 11, he corrected, like those few months mattered. Claire leaned against the railing beside him, careful not to look down. Heights had never been her thing. Do you ever wish you were normal? Just a regular kid? What's normal? Haruto's voice was genuinely curious. I've never been anything else.
School. Friends.
Playing video games without checking windows for assassins. I go to school. Private tutors, mostly. Haruto kicked his legs against the railing. And I have the game you saw on the train. Father bought it because he read that normal children play games. The way he said normal children broke Claire's heart, like he was a different species, studying humanity from the outside. What about friends? She asked gently. Haruto was quiet for a long moment. Father says friendships are leverage. People you care about become weapons others can use against you. It's better to be alone. That's not living. That's just surviving. Isn't that the same thing? Claire wanted to argue, but how could she? She'd been surviving too, hiding in Tokyo, serving drinks to criminals, running from a past that had imploded. She hadn't been living either. Your father loves you, she said instead. You know that, right? I know he values me. Haruto's tone was matter-of-fact. I'm his heir, his legacy. Everything he's built requires me to continue it. That's not what I asked. Haruto looked at her then, really looked, and Claire saw something crack behind those ancient eyes. I don't know what love looks like. Is it protection? Training? Making sure I'm strong enough to survive? If that's love, then yes. He loves me. Love is also being allowed to be weak sometimes. To make mistakes. To just be a kid. Weak heirs don't survive long enough to become strong leaders. Haruto turned back to the city. I've seen father's files. The previous heirs, my uncles, cousins. Most died before 20. Car accidents.
Rival clans.
Some just disappeared. Father keeps me alive by making me dangerous. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain. Claire pulled her borrowed jacket tighter. The contract, Haruto said suddenly. The translators who died. Do you know why? Your father said the power transfers. The contract kills them to reclaim. That's what everyone thinks. Haruto pulled something from his pocket, the notebook with his drawings. He flipped to a page near the end, covered in characters Claire hadn't seen yet. But I read father's research when he wasn't looking. The translator from 1987, Kimiko Ito. Her private notes, the ones not in the official files. How did you? Father keeps everything in his office safe. I learned the combination when I was 8. Haruto said it casually, like breaking into safes was a normal childhood milestone. Kimiko wrote that the contract doesn't kill the translator. The translator dies because they see the truth. Claire's blood went cold. What truth? She didn't finish writing it. But she wrote that the final section doesn't free anyone. It transfers all the power, every clan's debts, territories, blood oaths, to whoever completes the translation. One person controlling everything. Haruto looked at Claire with eyes too old, too knowing. That's why they die. Every clan, every family, they can't allow that much power to exist. So they kill the translator immediately. Your father knows this. I think so. But he still wants you to finish. Haruto's voice dropped to a whisper. Because he believes if you free the clans from the old bonds, I can be free too. He's gambling that you'll choose to release the power instead of keeping it. I would never. Father will protect you as long as he can, Haruto continued, ignoring her protest. The contract forces him to. But the clan won't. The moment you finish translating, even Father's protection ends. The binding releases. And then he made a cutting gesture across his throat. Claire's hands were shaking. Why are you telling me this? Because I like you, Haruto said it simply, like he was admitting he liked ice cream. You're the first person who's treated me like a child instead of an asset. You held my hand in the car. You told Father not to yell at me. Small things maybe, but no one else does them. Haruto. I don't want you to die, his voice cracked, and suddenly, he was just a scared 10-year-old. Everyone who gets close to father dies. My mother died when I was 3, car accident they said, but I heard whispers it was a rival clan. My grandfather, my uncles, the bodyguards who trained me. Everyone dies. And now you will too, and it's my fault because father needs you to free me. Tears ran down his face, the first real emotion Claire had seen from him. She pulled him into a hug, and he clung to her like he was drowning. It's not your fault, Claire whispered. None of this is your fault. I'm not supposed to cry. Father says. I don't care what your father says, Claire held him tighter. You're allowed to be scared. You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to be 10 years old. They stayed like that for a long time, on a rooftop in Osaka, while a boy who'd been taught not to feel finally let himself break. And Claire realized with terrible certainty that she was going to finish the translation. Not for the 20 million. Not even for herself. For this child who'd never known kindness without calculation. Will you really die? Haruto finally asked, his voice muffled against her shoulder. I don't know, Claire said honestly. But I'm going to try very hard not to. That's what they all said, Haruto pulled back, wiping his eyes roughly. The previous translators. Kimiko wrote that she thought she could survive. She was wrong. Maybe. But I have something she didn't. What? Claire managed a smile. A very smart kid who knows how to break into safes and memorize ancient contracts. If there's a loophole, we'll find it together. Haruto almost smiled back. Almost. Father wouldn't like us working together. He'd say I'm too young, that it's too dangerous. Then we won't tell him. That's dishonest. That's survival, Claire said, echoing his father's words. Sometimes they're the same thing. The rooftop door opened again. Sato stood there, his expression unreadable in the darkness. How long had he been listening? We leave in 4 hours, he said quietly. Get some sleep. Both of you. Haruto slid off the railing. Suddenly, the composed air again. The mask was back on, the tears hidden. Yes, father. He walked past Sato without looking at him, disappearing into the hotel. Sato watched him go, something complicated crossing his face.
He opened up to you, Sato said. That's
unusual. He's a good kid. He's a weapon I'm sharpening for a war he didn't choose. Sato lit a cigarette, his hand steady. Don't confuse kindness with weakness, Miss Morgan. Haruto understands his role. He'll do what's necessary when the time comes. He's 10, Claire said, anger flaring. He shouldn't have to do anything except homework and play with friends. In a perfect world, yes, Sato exhaled smoke. But we don't live in that world. We live in this one, where kindness gets you killed and children inherit their father's wars.
He turned to leave, then paused.
He told you about Kimiko's real notes, didn't he? About what the contract actually does. Claire's silence was answer enough. Sato nodded slowly.
Good.
Then you know what you're walking into. The question is, will you still walk? For him, Claire looked at the door where Haruto had disappeared. Yes. Even knowing it kills you? Even then. Sato studied her for a long moment. You're either very brave or very stupid, Miss Morgan. Probably both. He almost smiled. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we meet Professor Hanayama. And tomorrow, the real translation begins. They never made it to Kyoto. The betrayal came at dawn, wrapped in a phone call that made Sato's face go white. He listened for 30 seconds, said nothing, then crushed the phone in his hand. Plastic and glass scattered across the hotel room floor. They have the professor, he said quietly. Dangerously. Claire's stomach dropped. Hanayama, taken from his home 2 hours ago. The coalition's Sato paced like a caged animal. They're sending a message. No one helps you. No 1 inch. Then we find another. There is no other. Sato's control finally cracked. Hanayama was the only scholar left who understood the old bindings. Without him, you're translating blind. One wrong word could activate clauses that he stopped, forcing calm. We need him back. Do they want to trade? Claire asked. Me for him. They want you dead, and the contract burned. Trading isn't part of their plan. Sato's phone rang again. A new one materialized from somewhere. He answered in clipped Japanese, his expression darkening with each word. He hung up. My second-in-command, Tanaka. He wants to meet. Says he has information about the professor. It's a trap, Claire said immediately. Obviously, Sato checked his gun, chambered a round. But it's the only lead we have. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a nondescript office building in an industrial district. The sign outside advertised import-export services, a front for Yakuza operations. Sato's men surrounded the building, but their body language was wrong.
Tense.
Uncertain. Something's off, Sato muttered. They entered through the back. The office was standard corporate, cubicles, filing cabinets, fluorescent lights. But it was too quiet. No workers. No sounds of business. Haruto stayed close to Claire, his hand near his wooden sword. They found Tanaka in the conference room. He was a heavy-set man in his 50s with cold eyes and hands folded calmly on the table. 3 other men flanked him, clan members Claire recognized from the warehouse. Oyabun, Tanaka said, standing and bowing. But the bow was shallow. Disrespectful. Thank you for coming. Where's the professor? Sato demanded. Safe. For now, Tanaka smiled without warmth. But we need to discuss terms. Terms? Sato's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. You work for me, Tanaka. You don't negotiate. I work for the clan. And the clan has decided, Tanaka gestured to the other men, that the American dies today. The contract ends. We return to the old ways. The contract binds you to protect her. Does it? Tanaka pulled out a document, modern paper, legal printing. I consulted with our lawyers. The binding only affects those who directly serve you as Oyabun. As of this morning, I've resigned my position. These men as well. We no longer serve the Sato family. Which means he pulled a gun. We're free to do what should have been done from the start. The other men drew weapons too, pointing them at Claire. Sato moved in front of her instantly, his own gun raised. You've declared war on your own family. I've declared war on stupidity. Tanaka's face twisted with contempt. You'd sacrifice the clan for one woman? For the fantasy that some American waitress can free us? Every translator has died, Sato. Every single one. It's time to accept reality. Father, Haruto whispered, pressing against Claire's back. The boy too, Tanaka said coldly.
I'm sorry, Haruto.
But you've been contaminated by your father's weakness. The clan needs stronger leadership. Everything happened at once. The door behind them burst open, more of Tanaka's men surrounding them. At least 8 guns now pointed at Claire, Haruto, and Sato. But Sato didn't lower his weapon. You'd kill a child? Your own blood. For the clan? Yes, Tanaka aimed at Haruto. The old ways demand sacrifice. Your grandfather understood. Your father understood. You've gone soft. The gun swung toward Haruto. Claire moved without thinking. She shoved Haruto behind her, putting her body between him and the weapon. No. Touching, Tanaka said. But pointless. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. But Claire didn't fall. She stood there, confused, until she realized Sato had shot first, not at Tanaka, but at the fluorescent lights. Glass exploded, plunging the room into darkness. Run! Sato roared. Claire grabbed Haruto's hand and ran. Behind them, gunfire erupted, muzzle flashes lighting the darkness like strobe lights. Men shouted. Something crashed. They burst into the hallway. Sato was right behind them, returning fire, keeping the traitors pinned. The freight tunnels. Go! Claire had no idea where those were, but Haruto pulled her forward with surprising strength. He navigated the dark building like he'd memorized the layout, through offices downstairs, into a basement that smelled like mold and rust. A metal door. Haruto kicked it open, revealing tunnels stretching into darkness. They plunged in. Emergency lights provided barely enough illumination to see. The tunnels were narrow, concrete walls pressing close, pipes running overhead. Water dripped somewhere in the distance. They're coming. Sato caught up, breathing hard. Blood stained his shoulder. Keep moving. Behind them, flashlight beams cut through the darkness. Shouting echoed off the walls. They were being hunted. Haruto led them through twists and turns, his small hand gripping Claire's with desperate strength. Left, right, down a ladder, through a junction where 3 tunnels met. The boy moved with confidence even as tears streamed down his face. Haruto, Claire started. I'm fine, he choked out. Keep running. They emerged into a larger chamber, some kind of old maintenance station. Rusted equipment filled the space. Haruto pulled them behind a massive pipe assembly, just as flashlight beams swept the entrance. They went this way. Split up. Find them. Footsteps echoed in multiple directions. Claire's lungs burned. Beside her, Sato pressed a hand to his bloody shoulder, his face pale. And Haruto. Haruto had finally stopped running. He crouched between them, his whole body shaking, the wooden sword clutched in white-knuckled hands. They want to kill me, he whispered. Tanaka wants to kill me. I won't let that happen, Claire said fiercely. You can't stop them. His voice broke. You're just a waitress. You don't know how to fight. How to? Claire pulled him close, covering his mouth gently. Footsteps were getting closer. Sato checked his gun. 3 rounds left. Against 8 men, maybe more. His eyes met Claire's in the dim light, and she saw him calculating odds he didn't like. The contract, Claire whispered. Can I command them? Even though they resigned.
No.
They broke the binding by leaving my service, Sato's jaw clenched. But Tanaka made a mistake. What? He showed his hand too early. Not all my men are traitors. The ones at the warehouse, they're still loyal. I sent a message before the lights went out. He checked his watch. If we can survive 20 minutes, reinforcements come. That's a big if, Claire said. Yes. A flashlight beam swept over their hiding spot. They pressed deeper into the shadows. A man passed within feet of them, gun drawn, searching. Haruto's hand found Claire's again. His fingers were ice cold. I'm scared, he breathed, so quietly only she could hear. Me too, Claire admitted. Father says fear is. Your father is wrong, Claire squeezed his hand. Fear means you're alive. It means you still have something worth protecting. The man with the flashlight stopped.
Turned.
The beam caught the edge of Claire's shoe. There. Everything exploded into chaos. Sato fired, 1 shot, 2, both hitting center mass. The man went down, but his gunfire had given away their position. More men converged. Bullets ricocheted off pipes, sparking in the darkness. Sato grabbed Haruto and Claire, shoving them toward a side tunnel. Go.
Now.
Father. Haruto screamed. Go. Claire didn't think. She grabbed Haruto by the wrist and ran, dragging him as he fought to go back. Behind them, Sato's final shot echoed, then silence. No. Haruto thrashed. Father. Father. Claire ran harder, her throat raw, her vision blurred with tears. The tunnel stretched endlessly. More turns. More darkness. Haruto was crying, screaming for his father, but she couldn't stop. Wouldn't stop. They burst out into daylight, a storm drain opening onto a river embankment. Morning sun blinded them. Traffic sounds nearby. The normal world, continuing while theirs collapsed. Claire collapsed on the concrete, dragging Haruto down with her. He fought her grip, trying to go back. We have to help him, Haruto sobbed. He's going to die. They'll kill him. He told us to run, Claire gasped. He gave us a chance. We can't waste it. He's my father. I know, Claire held the boy as he broke, his screams echoing off the concrete. I know. They couldn't stay here. Tanaka's men would find them. But for one moment, Claire let Haruto grieve, for his father, for his childhood, for the illusion of safety that had just shattered completely. In the distance, sirens wailed. Whether coming for them or against them, Claire didn't know. All she knew was they were alone now. A 10-year-old boy and a waitress, hunted by both sides, carrying a contract that everyone wanted destroyed. And somewhere in those tunnels, Sato was either dead or fighting for his life against men he'd once called brothers. Professor Hanayama wasn't dead. Claire discovered this 12 hours after escaping the tunnels, after hiding in an internet cafe bathroom while Haruto used a stolen tablet to hack into police communications after the boy, still red-eyed from crying, had methodically tracked Yakuza chatter across encrypted channels like it was homework. "They're holding him at a hotel in Kyoto," Haruto said, his voice hollow. "The same place we were supposed to meet him. It's bait." "For us," Claire finished. They were in another cheap hotel room, this one in Kyoto's outskirts. Claire had paid cash, used a fake name, kept her head down. Haruto had barely spoken except to relay information, his grief converted into cold efficiency that scared her more than his tears had. "Any word about your father?" Claire asked gently. Haruto's hands clenched on the tablet. No bodies reported in the tunnels, but also no confirmed survivors. He swallowed hard. Schrodinger's Yakuza boss. The joke didn't land. His voice cracked on the last word. Claire wanted to comfort him, but what could she say? Sato might be dead. Probably was dead. 3 bullets against 8 men. The math was brutal. "The professor," Haruto said, forcing focus. "They have him in the Kyoto Grand Hotel, 5th floor. For guards minimum. They're waiting for you to attempt rescue. Then we don't rescue him. We find another way to." "There is no other way." Haruto's eyes were ancient again, the brief glimpse of childhood gone. "You said it yourself. Without Hanayama, you can't finish the translation safely. And if you don't finish it, we both die. The Elder's deadline is tomorrow."
Tomorrow.
Claire had almost forgotten. 3 days, Sato had said. They were on day 5 now. The Elders had probably already issued kill orders. "Maybe Hanayama knows something," Haruto continued, his fingers flying across the tablet. "Something that can help us survive, what no one else has. We need him. So we walk into a trap." "Yes," Haruto looked at her with Sato's calculating eyes. "But we do it smart." The Kyoto University archives weren't part of the trap. Haruto had verified that. The building was old, traditional architecture mixed with modern security, located on the edge of campus, where few students bothered to go. Professor Hanayama had worked here for 30 years before retiring. His office was supposedly untouched, preserved like a shrine by colleagues who respected his scholarship. "How do we get in?" Claire asked, staring at the security checkpoint. "We don't." Haruto pointed to a side entrance partially hidden by bamboo. "Service door." Hanayama mentioned it in an interview 5 years ago, said he used it to avoid administrative meetings. "You read his interviews?" "I read everything." Haruto picked the lock with tools that appeared from his pocket. When had he learned that? Father's lessons. Useful now. The door opened. They slipped inside. The archives smelled like old paper and dust. Rows of shelves stretched into dimness, filled with documents, scrolls, reference materials. Hanayama's office was on the 3rd floor, tucked in a corner behind stacks of medieval legal texts. The door was locked but not alarmed. Haruto had it open in seconds. Inside was organized chaos. Books everywhere, papers stacked on every surface, a chalkboard covered in linguistic notations. But what caught Claire's attention was the wall. Photographs. Dozens of them. All showing the same scroll, Sato's contract, from different angles, different sections. And beneath each photo, notes in English and Japanese, analyzing grammar, historical context, legal implications. "He was obsessed," Claire whispered. "He knew." Haruto pointed to a section of notes dated 3 months ago. "Look," Claire read. "The 12th section is not a release, it's a transfer. Total authority over all bound clans to a single interpreter. But why would the Tokugawa shogunate create such a mechanism? What purpose does consolidating power serve unless?" The note ended there, trailing off mid-thought. Unless what? Claire wondered aloud. Haruto was already searching the desk. He found a journal, leather-bound and worn. He flipped through pages covered in Hanayama's cramped handwriting.
Here, Haruto said.
From last week. Claire read over his shoulder. Sato contacted me. The American girl has activated the contract. Impossible, I thought. Outsiders cannot trigger the binding. But perhaps that's the point. Perhaps the contract was designed for an outsider. Someone with no clan loyalty, no blood debts, no ancestral obligations. Someone who could read the final section and make the choice objectively.
Choice.
Claire felt her chest tighten. What choice? Haruto flipped ahead. The handwriting became more frantic. I've found references to a 13th section.
Hidden.
Never translated, because every interpreter died at 12. But if the 13th exists, it might provide the actual release mechanism, not transfer of power, but dissolution. Complete freedom for all clans. The question is whether the interpreter can survive long enough to find it. There's more, Claire said, excitement and terror mixing. There's a section beyond what everyone thinks is the end. But how do you find it if 12 kills you? Claire turned to the chalkboard. Hanayama had diagrammed the contract structure, 12 sections, each building on the previous, each adding more power, more binding. And at the end, a question mark followed by, hidden in plain sight. The sections overlap, Claire realized, tracing the diagram. Look, the grammar structure. Each section contains echoes of the previous one, legal clauses referencing back. What if the 13th isn't separate? What if it's encoded in the others? A puzzle, Haruto said. You have to read all 12 to understand 13. But everyone dies at 12. Everyone who rushed to the end, Haruto pointed to Hanayama's notes on previous translators. They focused on finishing, getting to the power. But if you're looking for something hidden, you read differently, Claire finished. You look for the pattern beneath the text. She felt something shift, not the contract's binding, but understanding. The previous translators had died because they'd read linearly, following the text to its obvious conclusion. But Tokugawa-era legal documents often contained hidden clauses, secondary meanings accessible only to those who understood the deeper grammar. We need Hanayama, Claire said urgently. If he's found proof of a 13th section, he might know how to. Glass shattered in the hallway outside. Footsteps. Multiple people. Moving fast. They found us, Haruto whispered, pulling his wooden sword.
How?
We were careful. The door burst open. But it wasn't Tanaka's men. It was Sato. He looked like hell. Face bruised, shoulder bandaged badly, suit torn and bloody. But alive. Impossibly, gloriously alive. Father. Haruto launched himself at Sato, who caught him with his good arm. No time, Sato gasped. They're right behind me. I led them away from the hotel, where they're holding Hanayama. But more footsteps thundered up the stairs. The scroll, Claire said quickly. Do you still have it? Sato pulled it from inside his jacket. Why? Because I think I know how to survive this. But we need the professor to confirm. Claire grabbed the scroll, stuffing it in her bag along with Hanayama's journal. And we need to get him out. That's suicide, Sato said. For guards minimum, probably more by now. 5, said a new voice from the doorway. They spun. An elderly man stood there, hands raised, flanked by 2 younger men in suits. But these weren't Yakuza, they wore academic badges, university security. Professor Hanayama? Claire breathed. In the flesh, he smiled tiredly. Or what's left of it after 3 days of interrogation, he gestured to his escorts. These gentlemen helped me escape an hour ago. My former students. Very loyal. You're not at the hotel, Haruto said, confused. That's what they want you to think. Hanayama stepped inside, locking the door behind him. Classic misdirection. Hold an empty room while the real prisoner is moved to a secondary location. Except their secondary location happened to be near campus, and my students happened to be very resourceful with bolt cutters. We don't have time for explanations, Sato said, wincing. They're coming. Then we use the tunnel, Hanayama said calmly. He pushed aside a bookshelf, revealing a narrow passage. Built during the war. Connects to the old library. This way. They fled into darkness, leaving the office behind just as the door splintered inward. And Claire clutched Hanayama's journal, hope and terror balanced on a knife's edge. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way to survive this after all. The shrine was barely larger than a closet, a forgotten corner of Kyoto tucked between modern buildings, its red torii gate faded to rust brown. An old woman tended the grounds, sweeping leaves that would return by morning. She glanced at them once, noted Sato's bloody shoulder and Haruto's exhausted face, and said nothing. Some things weren't her business. Professor Hanayama had left them here 2 hours ago. I need to retrieve documents from my home, he'd said. Research that might confirm the 13th section. Wait here. It's sacred ground. Even Yakuza respect the old boundaries. So they waited. Claire sat on the shrine steps, exhaustion crushing down. Haruto had finally fallen asleep against her shoulder, his wooden sword loose in his grip. The boy had been awake for nearly 40 hours. His body had simply given up. Sato stood apart, smoking, staring at the city lights beyond the shrine. He'd refused medical attention for his shoulder. Field dressed it myself, he'd said. I've had worse. Now, in the quiet, Claire could see how badly he was hurt. The way he favored his left side. The gray tinge to his skin. The tremor in his hands he couldn't quite hide. You should be in a hospital, Claire said softly. Hospitals keep records. Records get people killed. Sato took a long drag. I'll survive. I always do. Your men. The loyal ones found me in the tunnels. Got me out, his voice was flat. 3 died doing it.
Good men.
Better than I deserved. Tanaka? Escaped. Probably regrouping with the coalition. Sato crushed the cigarette under his heel. The clan is fractured now. Half with me, half against. It's civil war, essentially. Claire adjusted Haruto's weight against her shoulder. The boy mumbled something in his sleep, his face finally peaceful. He thought you were dead. Part of me wishes I was. Sato moved closer, sitting on the steps below her. Would be simpler. For who? Everyone. He pulled out another cigarette but didn't light it, just rolled it between his fingers. Do you know why I really wanted you to finish the contract? To free Haruto. That's what I told myself. Sato's laugh was bitter. Noble lie. Truth is, I'm dying. Claire's breath caught. What? Heart condition. Genetic. Same thing that killed my father at 49, my grandfather at 47. He finally lit the cigarette despite how his hands shook. I'm 43. Doctors give me maybe 2 years. Maybe less with the stress. Does Haruto know?
No.
And he won't. Sato's voice hardened. He's already lost his mother. I won't make him watch me deteriorate. So you'd rather die in a gang war? I'd rather die meaning something. He exhaled smoke slowly. Every Sato patriarch dies young. It's not coincidence, it's the contract. The binding puts pressure on the bloodline. Physical manifestation of ancestral debt. My father's heart gave out during a negotiation. His father during a meeting. All of us, dying inside while pretending to be strong. Claire looked at Haruto. Understanding dawning. You wanted the contract broken before it passes to him. I wanted him to have a chance. Sato's composure cracked. Just a chance at life. Real life. Not this. He gestured at himself, at the shrine, at everything. Inherited nightmare. Why not just walk away? Take Haruto and leave. Leave. Sato laughed without humor. You don't leave the Yakuza. You die in it or you die running from it. The contract ensures that. Blood debts don't expire. Territorial agreements don't void. I was born into this, raised for this, and I'll die in this. He looked at her. But Haruto doesn't have to. That's why you risked everything for a waitress who stumbled into your world. You're the first outsider to activate the binding in 300 years. That has to mean something. He stubbed out the cigarette. Every translator before you was Japanese. Clan-affiliated. They understood the power they were claiming. But you? He almost smiled. You don't want power. You just want to survive. That makes you dangerous. Or maybe it makes you perfect. Claire stroked Haruto's hair gently. Hanayama thinks there's a 13th section. A real release, not just power transfer.
I know.
I've suspected for years. Sato pulled the scroll from his jacket, unrolled it carefully. The ink still moved, black on yellow. My grandfather mentioned it once, when he was dying. Said the contract has a mercy clause, but only for those pure enough to see it. I thought he was delirious. But then you activated the binding, and I wondered. Pure enough. Claire frowned. What does that mean?
No idea.
But every previous translator was motivated by power, personal gain, clan advancement, political leverage. They read the contract to claim what it offered. He looked at her intently. You read it by accident.
No agenda. No greed. Just
linguistic curiosity. And that matters. In Tokugawa law, intent is everything. The shogunate structured legal bindings around the reader's purpose. Same words, different results depending on who speaks them, and why Sato rolled up the scroll. Maybe that's why you're still alive when others died. The contract recognized you as different. Footsteps on the path. They both tensed. Sato's hand went to his gun. But it was just Hanayama, carrying a worn briefcase. He looked more exhausted than before, his clothes disheveled. I found it, he said without preamble. Confirmation. The 13th section exists. Claire carefully moved Haruto's head to rest against the shrine steps, then stood. Where? Hidden in the calligraphy itself, Hanayama opened the briefcase, pulled out photographs and reference texts. Each section contains decorative flourishes, extra strokes that seem like artistic embellishment. But when you overlay all 12 sections, the flourishes form new characters. A completely separate text. He spread the photographs on the steps. Claire leaned in, her linguistic training kicking in. He was right. The decorative elements, when isolated and combined, created new words. What does it say? Sato demanded. I'm not entirely sure. The grammar is archaic even for Tokugawa period. But the general meaning, Hanayama pointed to key characters. Something about breaking chains through sacrifice, and blood offered freely breaks blood demanded. Sacrifice, Claire repeated, her stomach sinking. Like dying? Not necessarily. Sacrifice can mean many things, giving up power, releasing claims, accepting loss. Hanayama looked at her seriously. But yes, historically, blood sacrifice was common in binding contracts. The question is whose blood, and how much? We're running out of time, Sato said. The Elder's deadline has passed. Every clan in Japan is hunting us now. And the coalition. Tanaka's people, they'll make their move soon. Then we need to finish this. Claire looked at the scroll, at the moving ink that had destroyed so many lives. Tomorrow, we find a safe place, and I translate the final sections. That's suicide, Hanayama said flatly. Every previous attempt had translators seeking power. I'm not. Claire's voice was steady despite her fear. I want one thing, to free this boy from a war he didn't choose. If that requires sacrifice, then fine. But I'm doing it on my terms, not on some 300-year-old curse's terms. Sato studied her for a long moment. You've changed. 5 days ago, you were a terrified waitress. Now I'm a terrified linguist with a deadline. Claire managed a weak smile. Different, but not better. Haruto stirred, waking slowly. He looked up at Claire, then at his father, and relief flooded his face. You're both here. I thought. We're here, Claire said gently. And we have a plan. What plan? A dangerous one. Sato knelt beside his son, wincing at the movement. Haruto, listen carefully. Tomorrow, Claire will finish translating the contract. When she does, everything changes. The clan, the obligations, everything. But it might cost her life. No. Haruto grabbed Claire's hand. There has to be another way. There isn't, Claire said softly. But maybe I can survive it. Maybe being an outsider gives me an advantage. We won't know until we try. I don't want you to die for me, Haruto whispered, tears returning. No one should die for me. Then live for me instead, Claire cupped his face. If I do this, if I free you, live a real life. Go to school. Make friends. Be a normal kid. Can you promise me that? Haruto nodded, crying silently. Sato turned away, but not before Claire saw his expression crack. Where? Hanayama asked. Where can you safely complete the translation? It needs to be on sacred ground, where the binding was first formed. The ancestral cemetery, Sato said quietly. Outside Tokyo, where the first Sato patriarch made the original oath. The contract will have full power there. Then that's where we go. Claire looked at the three of them, the dying father, the brilliant scholar, the child who deserved better. Tomorrow, we end this. The old woman had stopped sweeping. She bowed to the shrine, then to them, and shuffled away into the night. And Claire stood there, holding a boy's hand, knowing that in less than 24 hours, she'd either break a 300-year curse or become its latest victim. The plan was simple. Take the morning train to Tokyo, arrive at the ancestral cemetery by noon, finish the translation before the coalition could mobilize. The plan lasted exactly 12 minutes. Kyoto Central Station was a cathedral of glass and steel, 20,000 commuters flowing through its arteries during morning rush hour. Claire wore a surgical mask and baseball cap, normal enough in Japan, while Haruto stayed close, backpack slung over his shoulders. Sato and Hanayama walked separately, pretending they didn't know each other. They'd almost reached the platform when Claire saw him. Tanaka, standing by a coffee shop, scanning the crowd with dead eyes. Don't look, Sato's voice crackled in the earpiece Haruto had given her. Keep walking. Claire forced her legs to move. 20 yards to the platform. 15. The train was already there, doors open, salvation waiting. Tanaka's gaze swept past her, then snapped back. Recognition flared in his eyes. Run! Sato shouted. Everything exploded. Tanaka's men materialized from the crowd. At least a dozen, maybe more. She'd been surrounded and hadn't known it. One lunged for Claire. Haruto swung his wooden sword with surprising force, cracking it across the man's knee. The man screamed, went down. Gunfire erupted. Not guns, couldn't risk that in a crowded station, but the high-pitched crack of tasers. A businessman next to Claire convulsed and dropped. Civilians scattered, screaming. Alarms shrieked. The orderly Japanese mourning dissolved into chaos. Haruto! Claire grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the platform. A man in a suit blocked their path. Sato appeared from nowhere, slamming into him with his good shoulder. Both of them crashing through a gift shop window. Manga and stuffed animals scattered across the floor. Go! Sato roared, blood streaming from a new cut on his face. Get on the train. Claire ran. Her lungs burned. Haruto's small hand gripped hers with desperate strength. The platform was chaos. Commuters shoving, station security trying to restore order, more of Tanaka's men pushing through the crowd. They reached the train doors just as they started closing. Hanayama appeared, shoving them through the gap. The doors sealed. The train began moving. Through the window, Claire saw Sato still fighting, 3 men now, his shoulder wound reopened, blood soaking through his shirt. He looked up, met her eyes through the glass. He smiled, nodded once. Then Tanaka raised something, not a taser. A gun. Real bullets, station security be damned. Father. Haruto screamed, pounding the window. Father. The gunshot was muffled by the train's movement, but Claire saw Sato jerk backward. Saw him fall. Saw Tanaka standing over him. No. Haruto was hysterical, trying to open the doors, to jump off a moving train. Claire wrapped her arms around him, holding him as he thrashed. We can't go back. We can't. He's dead. They killed him. I saw. I know, Claire's voice cracked. I know, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The train accelerated, leaving the station behind. Leaving Sato behind. Dead or dying, it didn't matter. They were gone, and he wasn't. Hanayama guided them to seats in the back, away from other passengers. Haruto had stopped fighting, gone rigid with shock. His eyes stared at nothing. "He's not dead," the boy whispered. "He can't be dead. He survived the tunnels. He's the Oyabun. He saved us," Claire said, tears streaming down her face. "He gave us a chance. I don't want a chance. I want my father." Haruto's voice was small, broken. "He's all I have." Claire pulled him close, and he finally broke, not crying, but something worse. Silent, shaking sobs that came from somewhere too deep for sound. The train rocketed through the countryside. Cherry blossoms blurred past the windows, beautiful and meaningless. "They'll follow," Hanayama said quietly. "Tanaka knows where we're going. The ancestral cemetery. It's the only place that makes sense." "How long do we have?" Claire asked. "An hour. Maybe 2 if we're lucky." Hanayama pulled out the photographs of the contract's hidden sections. "You need to prepare. The translation will be complicated, and if you make a mistake, I'll die faster than planned." "Got it." Claire looked at Haruto, still shaking against her shoulder. "But first, we deal with this." "There's nothing to deal with." Haruto's voice was flat, dead. "Father's gone. I'm the heir now. The last Sato. When you finish the contract, I inherit whatever's left." "You inherit freedom," Claire said firmly. "That's what your father wanted." "Freedom," Haruto laughed, but it sounded like breaking glass. "I don't even know what that means." The train stopped at a smaller station. A few passengers got off. New ones boarded, salarymen, students, an old woman with shopping bags. Normal people living normal lives. Then Claire saw them. 2 men in black suits, scanning the train cars methodically. "More of them," she breathed. "They're on every train out of Kyoto," Hanayama said grimly. "The coalition must have mobilized everything. They know you're trying to reach the cemetery. We can't get off. They'll grab us. We can't stay on either. Tokyo Central Station will be crawling with them." Haruto stirred, his tactical mind reasserting itself despite the grief. "We get off early. 2 stops before Tokyo. Transfer to local lines. Takes longer, but harder to track." "They'll cover those stations too," Hanayama said. "Not all of them. There are 63 local stations between here and the cemetery. They can't watch them all with perfect coverage." Haruto pulled out the stolen tablet, fingers flying across the screen despite how they trembled. "We use the gaps. Move fast. Stay unpredictable." Claire watched him work. This 10-year-old who just watched his father shot, now calmly planning their survival. It wasn't strength. It was trauma converting itself into function because breaking down wasn't an option. "Haruto," she said gently. "It's okay to not be okay right now." Later, his voice was mechanical. "I can fall apart later. Right now, I keep us alive." "That's what father would," his voice cracked. "That's what he wanted." The men in suits passed their car, moved to the next one. "Next station," Haruto decided. "We move then." They did. When the train slowed at a suburban platform, they slipped off, mixing with commuters. Hanayama led them through back streets, using routes that predated GPS mapping. They caught a local train, then a bus, then walked. Tokyo's outskirts materialized around them, suburban sprawl giving way to older neighborhoods, then to the rural edges where the city frayed into countryside. The ancestral cemetery sat on a hillside overlooking the city. Old graves, weathered stone, trees that had witnessed centuries. A Shinto priest maintained the grounds, but he was nowhere to be seen when they arrived. "He was paid to be elsewhere today," Hanayama said. "Money Sato provided before." The cemetery was silent, peaceful, the kind of place that made you whisper. Haruto walked to a specific grave, fresh flowers already laid there. "My grandfather," he said quietly, "and his father, and his father. All the way back to the first Sato who swore the oath he touched the stone. Father will be buried here too." When they find his body. "We don't know he's dead," Claire said, but the lie tasted bitter. "He's dead." Haruto turned to her, eyes ancient and empty. I felt it. When the gun fired, something broke. He pressed his hand to his chest.
Here.
The binding maybe. Or just knowing. Claire knelt beside him. I'm going to finish this. And when I do, you'll be free. That's what he died for. That's what will make it mean. And if you die too, then you run. As far and as fast as you can. And you live. Claire cupped his face. Promise me. Haruto nodded slowly. Behind them, Hanayama had spread the scroll on a stone altar. The ink writhed, eager, hungry. The sun is at its peak, he said. The optimal time for completion. The binding will be strongest, but so will the release, if there is 1 inch. Claire stood, walked to the altar. The scroll seemed to pulse under the noon light. How long will it take? She asked. The final sections? 30 minutes if you read carefully. But the hidden 13th, that requires reading all 12 simultaneously, finding the pattern beneath. Another hour, maybe more. We don't have an hour. Haruto had climbed onto a grave marker, scanning the access road. They're coming. 3 cars. Maybe 4 minutes away. Tanaka had found them. Claire looked at the scroll, at Hanayama's research, at Haruto standing watch like a soldier instead of a child. Then we work fast, she said, and began to read. Claire's hands shook as she touched the scroll. The ink moved faster now, sensing completion. Like it knew. Section 7, she began, her voice steady despite the terror. By blood offered and blood received, the clans are bound. The words came easier than they should have. 300 years of archaic Japanese, and somehow she understood perfectly, not just the meaning but the intent beneath. The desperation of the shogun who'd commissioned this. The fear he'd built into every character. 8, she continued. Territory claimed in darkness shall be held in light. 2 minutes. Haruto called from his perch. His voice cracked. Too young to be a lookout. Too young for any of this. Hanayama spread his photographs beside the scroll. Look for the flourishes. The hidden strokes. They're scattered through sections 9 through 12 inch. Claire read faster. Section 9 detailed blood debts. Families obligated to others through ancestral crimes. Section 10 outlined succession rules that made heirs into prisoners. 11 described the binding itself, how it chained souls across generations. And woven through all of it, nearly invisible, were extra strokes. Decorative elements that weren't decorative at all. I see it, Claire breathed. The hidden text was emerging like a magic eye puzzle suddenly resolving. The chain breaks only when freely chosen. 1 minute. Haruto's voice was pure fear now. They're at the gates. Gunfire erupted below. Not at them, warning shots, forcing the cemetery gates open. Section 12, Claire said urgently. The final bearer shall command all shadows, bind all oaths, control all debts. This was the power transfer. The moment every previous translator had died, their throats opened by invisible forces, the power reclaimed before it could be used. Claire felt it building. Pressure in her chest, like the binding was tightening, preparing to crush her heart the moment she finished. Don't. Haruto had abandoned his post, running to her. Don't finish. Please. I can't watch you die too. The 13th section, Hanayama interrupted, his finger tracing the hidden characters. It's here. You have to read all 12 again, simultaneously, seeing only the decorated strokes. It requires a completely different mental framework, Claire understood. Reading not for meaning but for pattern. Not translating but discovering. Footsteps pounded up the cemetery path. Shouting in Japanese. Tanaka's voice, commanding his men to surround them. Claire closed her eyes, took a breath. Let her academic training take over. The 3 years of studying Tokugawa legal documents, the countless hours analyzing grammar structures, the way Professor Marshall had taught her to see language as architecture before his scandal destroyed everything. She opened her eyes and read again. Not the words, but the spaces between. Not the obvious text, but the hidden one. And there it was. The chain breaks, she read, her voice strengthening. Only when freely chosen by one who claims no power. Blood offered willingly negates blood demanded. The bearer who relinquishes authority breaks all bindings, freeing not themselves, but those they choose to save. The scroll exploded with light. Blue flames erupted from the ink, not burning but illuminating. The characters lifted off the paper, swirling in the air like living things. The binding around Claire's chest tightened impossibly, crushing, and she understood. The sacrifice wasn't death. It was choice. I relinquish, she gasped, fighting to breathe, all authority granted by this contract. I claim no power over clans, no control over debts, no command over oaths. The flames swirled faster. I choose, her vision blurred, to free Hirudo Sato from all ancestral obligations. From blood debts, territorial claims, succession requirements. I break his chains completely. Tanaka burst into the shrine clearing, gun raised. His men flanked him, 8 of them, maybe more, all pointing weapons. Stop, Tanaka shouted. Stop now or I'll. You'll what? Claire's voice was stronger now, resonating with something ancient. Kill me? Break the binding? You can't. The contract forbids it until completion. Then I'll kill the boy. Tanaka swung his gun toward Hirudo. Sato's voice, weak but alive, stopped him. No. You won't. Everyone turned. Sato leaned against a gravestone, his shirt soaked with blood, one hand pressed to his side. He'd been shot, badly, but he was standing. Barely. Behind him, a handful of loyal Yakuza, the ones who'd stayed true. Father. Hirudo started toward him. Stay there, Sato commanded gently. Let her finish. But you're
Dying.
Yes. But not yet. Sato's gun was trained on Tanaka. Not until she's done. Claire turned back to the scroll. The blue flames had formed a sphere around her, and she understood the final piece. The 13th section wasn't just words, it was intention crystallized into law. For Hirudo Sato, she said clearly, I declare all bonds broken. From this moment, he owes no debt, inherits no obligation, and belongs to no clan. He is free. The sphere exploded outward. The blue flames washed over everyone in the cemetery. Claire, Hirudo, Sato, Tanaka, all the Yakuza. The binding that had existed for 300 years shattered, like glass. Claire felt it release. The weight on her chest vanished. The scroll turned to ash in her hands, crumbling to nothing, the ink evaporating like morning mist. Silence. Then Tanaka laughed.
You fool.
You've destroyed the contract, but you've also destroyed your only protection. Now, there's nothing stopping me from. Sato shot him. Once, center mass. Tanaka dropped, shock on his face. The contract is gone, Sato said coldly. Which means I'm no longer bound by its rules. Neither are my men, he gestured, and his loyalists raised their weapons. Drop your guns. All of you. Or join Tanaka. The traitors looked at each other. At their fallen leader. At Sato, who was somehow still standing despite the blood loss. They dropped their weapons. Leave, Sato ordered. You're no longer Yakuza. You're nothing. If I see any of you again, I'll finish what I started. They ran. Sato swayed, nearly falling. Hirudo caught him, crying openly now. Father, you're alive, you're actually. For now, Sato sank to the ground, his son supporting him. But Claire did it. She actually did it. You're free, Hirudo. Completely free. I don't care. Hirudo sobbed. I don't care about freedom if you're dead. Then care for me, Sato cupped his son's face with a bloody hand. Live the life I never could. That's how you honor me. Not by following in my footsteps, but by walking away from them. Claire collapsed beside them, exhausted. Hanayama checked her pulse, her breathing. You survived, he said, awed. You actually survived. The 13th section, Claire managed. It wasn't about claiming power. It was about giving it up. That's why everyone died. They read the 12th section, trying to seize control. But the contract only breaks when you reject what it offers. Brilliant, Hanayama whispered. 3 centuries, and no one understood. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the police. Of course they had. Gunfire in a cemetery wasn't subtle. Sato looked at his son, at Claire, at the ashes of the scroll scattered across ancestral graves. Haruto, he said softly, when the police come, you tell them the truth. All of it. The contract, the clans, everything. The truth sets you free, actually free, not just legally.
Can you do that?
Father, no. Can you do that? Sato's voice was firm despite his weakness. Haruto nodded, tears streaming. Good boy, Sato smiled, and for the first time, Claire saw him look peaceful. Claire. Yes. Thank you. For giving him what I never could. His eyes were unfocusing. Take care of him. Please. I will. I promise. Sato's hand dropped from Haruto's face. His breathing slowed, then stopped. Haruto screamed, a raw, broken sound that scattered birds from the trees. Claire held him as he shattered completely. This boy who'd been forced to be a soldier, finally allowed to just be a grieving child. The sirens grew louder. The police were coming. And overhead, the blue flames finally faded, taking 300 years of binding with them. The contract was complete. The curse was broken. And Haruto Sato, age 10, was finally, truly free. The hospital smell made Claire nauseous, antiseptic and death poorly disguised. She'd been here for 2 days, answering police questions, giving statements, watching lawyers in expensive suits negotiate quietly in corners. Sato had died in the ambulance. Haruto had been with him, holding his hand until the end. Now the boy sat in a hospital room that cost more per night than Claire's entire month's rent in Tokyo, staring at walls painted cheerful yellow. He hadn't spoken since his father died. Hadn't eaten. Just sat, wooden sword across his lap, somewhere far away. The lawyers said he was the wealthiest orphan in Japan. The Sato clan's legitimate assets, real estate, businesses, investments, all transferred to him, worth hundreds of millions.
He didn't seem to care.
Haruto, Claire said softly, sitting beside him. The police finished their investigation. The contract, the binding, Professor Hanayama's testimony verified everything. They're ruling your father's death as self-defense. You're clear. Nothing. His eyes didn't even flicker. The clan members who survived, the loyal ones, they've been cooperating with authorities, providing evidence on the coalition, on Tanaka's network, on 3 centuries of Yakuza operations. Claire took his hand. Your father's final act is dismantling the entire system. He's freeing everyone, not just you. Still nothing. Claire looked at Hanayama, who stood by the window.
He shook his head sadly.
Trauma this deep couldn't be reached with words. I'll give you time, Claire said, standing. Where will you go? Haruto's voice was so quiet she almost missed it. I don't know. Back to America, maybe. Face my old problems. They seem pretty small now. She tried to smile. What about you? I have appointments. Haruto's tone was mechanical. The lawyers say there are board meetings. Investment decisions. Clan elders requesting audiences. I inherit everything, so I have to. No, Claire said firmly. You don't. Haruto looked at her, confused. You're 10 years old. You don't have to do anything except heal. Claire knelt in front of him. Your father broke the contract, so you could be free. That means you get to choose, really choose what happens next. But the clan doesn't exist anymore. Not like before. The binding is broken. The blood oaths are void. Those men aren't bound to you. She squeezed his hand. They can choose new lives too. Your father gave everyone that gift. Then what do I do? Haruto's voice cracked. I don't know how to be anything except what I was trained to be. You learn. Claire stood, made a decision. Come with me. Right now. Where? You'll see. They drove for an hour in a rental car. Claire, Hiroto and Hanayama, who'd insisted on coming. Out of Tokyo, past suburbs, following the coast until they reached cliffs overlooking the Pacific. The Sato lawyers had been furious. The child has responsibilities, they'd argued. Claire had told them where they could file their complaints. Now they stood on windswept cliffs, the ocean crashing below, salt spray in the air. It was the opposite of the underground restaurants and shadowy offices. Open, bright, impossible to hide in. Why are we here? Hiroto asked. Claire pulled papers from her bag. Legal documents, dense with clauses. These are transfer forms. Your father's legitimate businesses, investments, properties, everything legal. I know. The lawyers explained. I'm signing them over. Claire had a pen ready. All of it. To charitable trusts, educational foundations, organizations that help children in the foster system. Hiroto stared. That's my inheritance. It's money soaked in blood. Claire was gentle but firm. Your father wanted you free, not wealthy. These assets come with expectations, obligations, people thinking they own part of you. I'm taking that away. You can't. I can. As your legal guardian, temporarily appointed by the court, I'm acting in your best interests. She'd spent yesterday arguing with judges, calling in favors from Professor Hanayama's legal contacts. Your father trusted me to take care of you. This is how. But I'll have nothing. Hiroto's voice was small, scared. You'll have enough. There's a trust fund, clean money, invested properly, managed by independent trustees. It'll pay for school, living expenses, college, everything you need. But not so much that you're a target. Claire knelt beside him. You get to be normal. Isn't that what you wanted? Tears ran down Hiroto's face. I don't know how to be normal. Neither do I, Claire smiled. We'll figure it out together. Together? If you want. The court appointed me temporary guardian, but long-term. That's your choice. I could take you back to America. You could stay in Japan with foster parents. You could. Hiroto grabbed her hand. I want to stay with you. Claire's throat tightened. Are you sure? I'm a broke linguistics student with no job and a criminal record in 2 countries now. You kept me alive. You broke a 300-year curse. You're the first person who treated me like a kid instead of an asset. Hiroto managed a tiny smile. That seems pretty qualified. Hanayama cleared his throat. For what it's worth, I've already drafted the guardianship paperwork. And I know UCLA's linguistics department. Your advisor's scandal has been re-examined. Turns out you were right all along. Your research was legitimate. They want you back. Really? Really? With a stipend. And student housing, he smiled. Enough for 2, if one is a child requiring guardianship. Claire looked at the ocean, at the endless horizon. California. New start. Normal life. What's California like? Hiroto asked. Sunny. Expensive. Full of weird people, Claire laughed. You'll hate it. Perfect. She signed the papers on the cliff's edge, releasing hundreds of millions in assets. The lawyers would be furious. The clan elders would be outraged. But the documents were legal, ironclad. Hiroto would be modestly wealthy, not obscenely so. Just a kid with opportunities, not obligations. What about the illegal operations? Hiroto asked. Father's Yakuza businesses? Already being dismantled. Sato's loyal men are cooperating with prosecutors, following his final orders. Within 6 months, the Sato clan will be history. Hanayama pocketed the signed documents. Your father's last gift, destroying the empire so you wouldn't inherit it. Hiroto touched the wooden sword at his belt. Can I keep this? Of course. It's yours. Father gave it to me when I was 6. Said every Sato carries a sword. He pulled it out, looked at the worn wood. But I'm not a Sato anymore. Not really. The clan is gone. The name is just a name. Then what are you? Claire asked gently. Hiroto thought for a long moment, watching the ocean. I'm 10 years old. Almost 11. And I think he smiled, actually smiled. I think that's enough. He threw the wooden sword off the cliff. They watched it tumble, spinning in the wind, disappearing into the waves below. 300 years of tradition, sinking beneath the Pacific. I'm ready, Haruto said. To be normal. To try.
Claire took his hand.
Then let's go home. Where's home? Wherever we decide it is. 3 months later, Claire sat in a UCLA classroom teaching undergraduate linguistics. Her criminal record had been cleared. The Japanese government had been surprisingly grateful for the information that dismantled organized crime networks. Professor Hanayama had testified about the contract's historical significance, turning Claire into a minor academic celebrity. She'd turned down the interview requests, the book deals, the movie options. Some stories didn't need to be told publicly. After class, she found Haruto waiting outside, backpack slung over his shoulder. He'd started school 2 weeks ago, 5th grade, public school, completely normal. He'd made one friend, a boy named Marcus who taught him playground basketball and shared his lunch. How was your day?
Claire asked.
Marcus says I'm weird because I bow when I meet people, Haruto grinned. But also cool because I know Japanese swear words. Please don't teach those to American 5th graders. Too late. They walked to the parking lot together, just a graduate student and her kid brother. That's what the paperwork said. Simpler than the truth. The California sun was warm. Traffic hummed. Everything was beautifully, wonderfully ordinary. Do you miss it? Haruto asked suddenly. Japan? The adventure? Claire thought about underground restaurants, bullet trains, ancient scrolls that could kill you. About a Yakuza boss who died to free his son. About contracts written in blood and broken by choice. No, she said honestly. I don't miss it at all. Me neither, Haruto squinted at the sun. This is better. Being nobody special. You'll always be special to me. I know. But that's different, he smiled. Easier now, more often. That's family. They got in the car. Drove home to their small apartment near campus. Had dinner, takeout because neither could cook well. Did homework. Watched TV. Fell asleep early because tomorrow was another normal day. And in Japan, on a hillside cemetery overlooking Tokyo, fresh flowers appeared on Daichi Sato's grave. No name on the card, no message needed. Just flowers, replaced every week by unknown hands, loyal men honoring their Oyabun's final wish. That his son would live free. And he did. The end.